Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to cue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back.
All right, all you positive heads, welcome one and all. I am super excited that you've joined me on this magical today. And today I thought I would bring my partner Brian back on the show, because I thought it was interesting that we just had Aaron here, and Aaron and Brian actually met at this very small sound healing school. And when they first met and they had this connection, it was a super synchronicity. And so I thought, since we talked about breath on Thursday with Aaron, I thought we would talk about sound today with Brian. So Brian, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And
of course.
thank you all Positive Head listeners for being here, and I'm honored to be back on the show.
Well, this is one of the things that I think Brian's an absolute master at. Like, this is his jam. This is his thing. He's a musician. The man just knows music. You know those musicians who can just like pick up any instrument and play stuff, or hear a note and tell you what that is? That's him. And so for him to do sound healing as a practice is just absolutely wonderful. So I really want you to tell me more about sound healing, how it works with the body, and I'm just going to let you go from here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it was really cool. The synchronicity just I want to speak to, because it has to do with the schooling that both Aaron and I went to. It was really fun that when we all met in Mount Shasta back in 2017, I think it was like the first conversation I was having with Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned something. I think he mentioned something about training and sound healing. And anyways, I can't remember what the first kind of intro was to it. But within a few sentences, we realized that we went to the same school, which is it's a school that was started by a man named Fabien Maman. And Fabien Maman at one time was actually in the Webster's Dictionary as the founding father of vibrational sound therapy. He was responsible for bringing some of the practices to the States. So he's from France originally. He's responsible for bringing like tuning forks on the body. He was the one who developed that practice. He was immersed in Chinese medicine. He was a world-renowned jazz guitarist. And then he did these really interesting experiments with something called Kirlian photography, which Kirlian photography was made famous in some esoteric circles with it takes like a picture of the electromagnetic spectrum of living tissue and biological tissue. And I think the experiments that were made popular, where they would like take a picture of a leaf and you could see kind of the electromagnetic light around it, and then they would cut the leaf, and the shape of the leaf was still there with the electromagnetic energy that was still kind of radiating from the living tissue. And what Fabien did is he got his hands on one of the cameras and worked with another, I think it was a physicist at the time. I could be wrong there, but it was a doctor who was working with the Kirlian photography and got hands on some living like blood cells he got hands on like cancer cells. And so he did all these interesting experiments where he played different various instruments, used the voice, um, did that for the living tissue and also the cancer cells. And he found that the living tissue would respond he's got it in his book called The Tao of Sound. And that was actually the first book that I stumbled across that he wrote, which got me, opened up into his world and sound healing. And it's really cool when you look at the pictures in there because the electromagnetic spectrum around the cells will change colors according to the different sounds. And then also he found that there were certain sounds that would make the pool of blood cells, a particular type of blood cells, because I think they were from several different people, would light up like more, like you could see one picture, it's like the whole like pool of cells is lighting up
Love it.
with all
Yeah.
like a spectrum of colors,
Mhm.
according to like a particular sound that he was playing or a particular sound and frequency.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's what got me really interested in that. And then I ended up studying with him. I did his level 1 and level 2 certification. And the main thing that I really got from studying with Fabian was the understanding of how subtle and powerful sound really is.
Yeah. And that's the coolest thing to me, and that's what I want to talk about today, because we forget when we live in this material world that we're all just vibration and we're color and light, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really an interesting introduction to the world of sound therapy. Fabian also had his own perceptions around different elements so some of the things that are common in the sound healing realm are the focus on things like frequencies and talking about chakras and how there's like a particular note that goes with each chakra and stuff like that. And he had his own ideas about that. And one of the ones that actually really stuck with me was he actually kind of assigned instruments or what I would call sound archetypes to each energy center, each chakra.
Mm.
And I think that was opening the door to a little bit more of what I feel like is a well-rounded and truthful perspective around how sound actually interacts with our energetic body. Because when we look at the idea of like a single note, this is common. And what Fabian actually said is that this originated with the original manufacturers of crystal singing bowls and is kind of arbitrary and based on nothing other than marketing, because they just basically took the C major scale, applied it to the 7 chakras from root to crown, and just said, C, D, E, so on, applies to each energy center respectively. And it's interesting because that's just totally, run its course. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that, energy centers are like organs, right? They're like
Mhm.
energetic organs of the body.
Mhm.
And so each one of those organs is a different shape. It's
Mhm.
a different structure. It requires different things in order to become healed and balanced. And so reducing what might balance a chakra down to a single note is kind of funny, especially when like someone like me who studied also music and music theory and understands that sound is not just frequency. There's actually 3 parts that make up any given sound. There's sound, wavelength, amplitude, dynamics, like things like that. And um, so the thing that I learned from Fabian that it really stuck with me and I've really continued to research and explore in my own practice is the concept of these types of sounds
Mhm.
that invoke a response within us, right?
Yeah. And you know what? That makes sense that the sounds would have an archetype, because so do our energy centers. They have a complex of archetypes.
Mhm.
And also when I think about this the chakras or the sounds or the notes of our body, they all sound different in different people. Like, for example, say you're a guitar and I'm a piano.
Mhm.
That's going to sound different, right? Like my chosen instrument. So we all have a different chosen instrument, and that's going to sound different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be the same note, but it's going to sound different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really great point because I was definitely going to touch on that. So that's a perfect lead in because a lot of times when I'm speaking to someone about like a note, for example, being what balances a chakra, I'm like, okay, Well, if I play a C note, and first of all, there's several C notes depending on what octave you're in, right? Well, let's just say I play a middle C on the piano. Well, if I play that note on the piano, and then I play it on the guitar, and then I play it on a flute, and then I play it on, another instrument, they're all different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're the same note essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why is that? Like, what's that difference? And that's what I attribute to the archetype. Now, technically, it has to do with the overtones. The overtones, which is like there's basically with sound, there's an algorithm essentially when you talk about really there's harmonics and overtones, and harmonics are like the perfect mathematical 2 to 1, and then you multiply by a certain amount as the notes essentially increase in frequency. I'm not good at explaining algorithms, but obviously I understand how it works. But essentially, it's like Pythagoras talked about it in his work, right? And really simply, it's like when you take a guitar string and you string it between 2 points, and then you put a thing in the middle, like a fret or like a little triangle thing. Then essentially that divides that. That is the octave. So when you pluck the string on either side, then that is an octave higher than the note of the string itself, where it's been strung. And then if you keep dividing those, then there's a logarithmic type of increase in frequency. And so, like when we are talking about sound archetypes and different sounds, we are talking about that they're comprised of all these overtones and harmonics that are fairly unique to that sound. And that's especially true of something like the human voice. So we have a certain range that our human voice is in, but also it's completely unique. Every single human voice on the planet is completely unique.
Like a fingerprint.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Is exactly like a fingerprint because of the wide range of frequencies. And just one last thing I'll say about that is, like, if you take the human voice, for example, and you put it into a spectral analyzer where you're analyzing basically the whole spectrum of frequencies, first of all, you see it's huge. So
Mhm.
it's like we're talking, I can't remember what the lowest frequency is, but it's, up to, what is it? Like 10,000 plus hertz, essentially. So as low as, let's say, 100 hertz, to 10,000 hertz. Like, that's the range of frequencies of the human voice. So that's why it's really funny when you're talking about, like, oh, one note or one frequency does X, Y, Z. It's like when we're talking about sound, unless it's a single pure sine wave that you play electronically, it's made up of so much more than just
Mhm.
that single frequency. So yeah, that part about it was really interesting. That opened up the door for me when I studied with Fabian. He didn't really talk about all that, but it was his concept of understanding these archetypes, and that each one of these sounds has a specific feeling and a color and its own information within it, the material it's made out of, and that kind of thing really opened up the doorway to understanding larger perspectives on it.
Well, and it also opens up the doorway to understanding creation,
Mm-hmm.
the universe,
Yeah.
how, all of it,
Mm-hmm.
the fabric of this reality, So it's fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and in regards to that element, like I have come to my I'll say my perception, will say, around what sound is I think that sound is an extension of love.
Hmm.
So when we talk about the law of one material, for example,
Yeah, I was just, my head just went there and I was like, oh, you're right. It is. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So when we talk about the law of one material and other materials that talk about love and light as being these primal forces, right?
Mhm.
So it's like light is essentially what everything's made out of,
Mm-hmm.
and love is the driving and organizing force behind it all.
Mm-hmm.
So sound is not a material. Like,
Right.
it's not a thing
Mhm.
at all, actually. It is a driving force that organizes or disorganizes light. And so it's actually it's like our local access to the energy of love
Yes.
in the kind of the physical form.
Well, God created the universe with sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the beginning was the word.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that means.
Yeah.
Sound.
Mm-hmm.
The word just means, well, it doesn't just mean, but sound. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's just been really interesting since then, because like my journey ever since studying with Fabian has also taken me into several different spaces. Working with plant medicine ended up being a really big um, catalyst for my understanding around sound and healing with sound. Specifically because it's like when you're in that space, like your senses are really heightened
Yeah.
and you're not seeing anything that's not there.
Right. You're just open up to stuff that you normally can't see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes really interesting, because like, the spaces that I sit in especially are kind of like smaller spaces, and it's like when you're in the medicine space and someone like opens up their water bottle or like
Right.
little sounds are really heightened. And then when the facilitators start doing the songs and the music, that's when it's like, holy moly.
Mm-hmm.
And the place that I sit with, they are just master musicians, and most facilitators are really powerful musicians. And I've also sat with those people who, they do such profound healing with sound, because really the medicine, and I'm talking specifically about ayahuasca, but like, ayahuasca really works closely with that sound that is being offered through the song. And I've seen incredibly powerful healings happen with a shaky voice and a drum, along with the medicine, of course. But again, even without the medicine, there is still such power there. And that's one of the things that I feel strongly about, is that when it comes to healing with sound, like I would take a shaky voice and a drum who knew what they were doing versus, a bunch of expensive sound instruments that might sound lovely, but are just kind of being played just because they're supposed to be healing. Right.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The voice. The voice is such an incredible healing tool. And it's a tool that we all have within us.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Like, we all can make sound. Ooh, I don't know if we should go into this, but what my mind is showing me right now is back in the day, how we used to do things. We as humans created with sound.
Mm-hmm.
We would get together and we would heal with sound, right? We would create with sound.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to say about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's some really interesting things that I think have happened in our past. I don't know if you remember our first QHHT session together, but
Well, yeah, I think that's actually where my mind went, but I just didn't say it. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just briefly, because obviously we want to keep this succinct, but like when I had my first QHHT session with you, I was recalling a past life in like Siberia area, right around the onset of the last like glacial period, which was like sudden, and I was with a family who was like, we had been separated from our tribe. We were just trying to survive, out in just kind of snowy tundra.
Mm-hmm.
But then you were asking me questions about like, my past in that life.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke about ancestors who spoke about star beings that had come from the sky, who had saved them after a cataclysm, and taught them various things and ways, and built certain things with sound. And there was actually like a image, a replay that happened in my mind, my past life mind, that I could see groups of people like toning essentially with their voice and moving stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that there was a song actually that my ancestor had passed down to me, and I tried to actually recite it on the recording, or like during the session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I actually still remember it. I think I actually talked about it. I think our very first podcast episode.
No, you sang it on the very first podcast.
I sang it on the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think they'll have to go listen to that show. You don't remember it, do you?
The actual show, like I'm pretty sure it was.
No, not the show, the song.
Yeah, I do.
Like you could sing it?
Yeah.
Like right now?
Well, it's really simple,
All right,
and
then
because
let's hear it
I'll
again
just
then,
preface this
really.
by saying that like what came through my human voice in the session was like one sliver of what I was hearing, because I was hearing like layers of voices, and they were what was interesting is that the layers of voices were creating higher harmonics. So, they were so harmonized that way they were creating these higher and lower harmonics essentially that were like just, full on the spectrum of hearing and probably even beyond, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really simple. The song just goes, the sound is like, um, hey, da, 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 yay. Hey, da, 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 yay. Da, 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 yay. And then there's kind of like a trail off part. It's a little different melody. I don't quite remember, but that was basically it. Like that's what my ancestors sang that represented that thing they did.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You know, when we can hear the songs that were sung in the days of old, when we were more connected, you can feel their power. If you listen to any indigenous music nowadays, you can feel it from the inside. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a powerful. It's a carrier of information.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, and one of the things I want to convey for anybody who's curious about healing with sound intentionally is to understand that is the most important part. Is that it's a carrier of intention, and to really, because there's so much out there right now around like healing miracle frequencies and like the debate between 432 and 440, and I've got all kinds of stuff to say on this topic, but really what I end up reducing it down to is just that music that you listen to that's like the 528 hertz love frequency, binaural beats music that makes you feel so good. It makes you feel so good because someone created that with loving intention and layers of harmonies and different things that go with it. Like it's the complete art and the offering that they put together with that intention.
Yeah. Intention is so huge.
Because if you just listen to 528 hertz like a sine wave, like without any intention, I guarantee it's
feels
probably
different.
it feels different. It might actually drive you mad, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, the difference between food grown with love and food that's been, just watered or not really loved, tastes different.
Yeah.
It definitely does. So,
Absolutely.
this works in a lot of different ways. Medicine is more powerful with intention. Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't take much to start intentionally utilizing sound and music for your own healing purposes.
Yeah.
Like it can be done with music and understanding that you can use music in a couple different ways. Like there's really kind of like a 3-step healing process that I use with music, and you can use it on your own, like, and that is like the first part is discovery. And like discovering, like if I want to go into a certain part of my energy body or my mind, my emotions, whatever, to heal it, then maybe I put on some kind of music that helps me kind of get into a discovery mode around that. Or I play something simple, or I tone or whatever, and I just kind of focus on like an area of the body or that thing, whatever it is, and just see what ends up being revealed. And then when you get some more information there, like asking that thing, how do you want to express yourself? How do you want to heal? Like asking it, engaging in a dialogue. And then when you get some information, great. Is it powerful? Is it like a cathartic release? Well, then great. Put on some Rage Against the Machine and just like, like shake it out or whatever, whatever probably feels
Whatever
a little bit
suits
more, whatever more healing. But sometimes that might be it. Might be just that somatic
Hey,
release.
sometimes I love that it's for that reason. And for me, it brings back such good memories of like being in high school and hanging out with my friends and like,
totally.
woo,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love putting on Rage Against the Machine and thrashing around a little bit sometimes. So like,
We're not the only ones.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then this is the important point, is that whatever that release is, then that's when you get into a space of receiving. And that's when you put on the relaxing stuff.
Not the raging.
Right.
I was like, wait, not with the rage.
And that's like, it's very similar to like ecstatic dance that I've has been one of my primary forms of medicine for many years. And like I studied 5 rhythms specifically, and it's like the format's a wave, and a lot of ecstatic dances are kind of like that. They have a wave structure, and it's very healing for that purpose. And that's a similar thing that you can do with music and sound on your own, and just allow it to reveal itself to you. And then that last third part is just relaxing and receiving, opening up to the blessing and the gratitude, and allowing spirit to work its way through you and do the healing.
It's like the Shavasana of yoga, my favorite part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is. Hmm.
Awesome. And you are going to be doing a work. What are you doing?
A workshop.
Just tell them
Yeah.
about your
Well,
workshop.
it was kind of last minute because I have been working and still want to do like an intensive sound healing training at some point. It's something that's been on my mind for a while, something I really desire to do. And I'm sitting on a lot of really important points that I feel like are often missing when people are exploring using sound as a healing tool. And when I say missing, like I just don't see it in a lot of the curriculums, some of the stuff that we've talked about, and some other key points. And I actually decided to name this workshop Everything You Need to Know About Healing with Sound. And I said that because that everything is not as crazy, and there's not that much.
Right. Yeah. There's only you only need to spit it out. You only need to know a few things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jeez.
and the everything that I feel, and I could probably put that in the title, but it's everything I feel that you
Mhm.
need to know about healing with sound. Because I just feel like if you understand these really critical, key, foundational points, you can utilize sound in a healing capacity in any way that you have access to. You don't need the thousands of dollars of, alchemy, crystal singing bowls, and you don't need to be a musician like me who, I have access to all these instruments, but realistically, sometimes that can be a detriment sometimes because
Mhm.
I have to understand that playing music is actually more of kind of an influential type of thing, and actually not as much a spacious, like let someone heal on their own type of thing. And
Mhm.
so I have to kind of rein that in. And so
Mhm.
one of the things I want to convey to those who might show up to this is that it really is simple, and there are some really important things that I
Yeah.
feel like are necessary to understand. So that's
Foundational items.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. It's going to be
Awesome.
next Tuesday,
The
which is the 18th.
18th.
Uh-huh.
Yes. All
And
right.
that's 4 p.m. It's a 3-hour workshop. It's 4 p.m. Pacific time.
And how do they find that?
Oh, it's on my website, www.wayshower.love/event, not events,
Just event.
just event. I tried to do events, but for some reason Wix is telling me that that's already taken, and I don't know where to find it. So if any Wix wizards out there to know how, like, why it's saying that the URL is taken.
Weird.
Yeah.
Very
But
weird.
yeah,
Well,
so it's
whatever. Okay.
event,
Yeah.
singular.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, and I think that's going to be it for us. This has been a very good long show today. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for joining me.
Mhm.
And you have a song that you've produced that we're going to play today.
Yeah, I'm excited
Yeah.
about this because I produced this song for a woman named Savannah Joy, and it's called Gaia's Song. So Savannah does kind of like vocal channeling, and she worked with me on a couple of tracks, and then now she's working with another music producer on some as well. But this is the last one that I did with her recently, and I'm really excited about it. It's a beautiful song. It's called Gaia's Song, and I hope you all enjoy.
Excellent. Well,
Mhm.
thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
And we love
Thank
you
you all.
all. Until next time.
Bye-bye.